In the 1950s, Hollywood was basically cranking out westerns nonstop, but some of the best ones from that era just kind of vanished. Some got overshadowed by bigger hits, some buried by bad timing. A few were just too violent or controversial and studios chickened out. We're talking big stars here. John Wayne, Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, but you've probably never even seen half these movies. This one's a real downer of a western, but a great classic. Man of the West wasn't a hit when it dropped. In 1958, it got buried by bigger titles, barely made a splash in the US, and faded fast, until Jean-Luc Godard, before he ever directed a film, called it the best movie of the year. That changed everything. Gary Cooper plays Link Jones, a reformed outlaw trying to leave the past behind. He's on a train carrying the town's school fund when a robbery strands him in the middle of nowhere. That's when he runs into his old gang. And they're not just old friends, they're family. Lee J. Cobb plays Doc Tobin, the gang's patriarch, and the whole crew is straight up deranged. Jack Lord is especially unhinged. These guys make early spaghetti western villains look tame. It's probably the nastiest crew you'll see in any pre-1960s western. Hondo is a John Wayne western that slipped under the radar for a long time, mostly because it just wasn't widely available. It didn't air on TV, barely screened in theaters, and wasn't easy to find on home video. Wayne plays Hondo Lane, a cavalry scout who stumbles onto a frontier woman and her son living out in Apache territory. Her husband's a no-show, and Hondo ends up filling that void, emotionally and in terms of protection, once things start heating up. The film's got Ward Bond, a solid supporting cast, and a script adapted from a Louis L'Amour story. Wayne loved the source material so much he called it the best Western novel I've ever read, and said the role of Hondo Lane captured the spirit of the Old West better than anything else he'd seen. There's a definite Shane vibe. It came out the same year, and Wayne himself admitted that probably hurt its box office. But the story holds up. It's about decency, responsibility, and doing the hard thing even when no one's watching. Calamity Jane is pure 1950s Technicolor charm, a musical western led by Doris Day at full power. She plays Calamity Jane as a rowdy tomboy with a gun on her hip and a chip on her shoulder. It's got comedy, romance, and plenty of singing, all wrapped around a fictionalized version of her friendship and possible romance with Wild Bill Hickok. If it sounds like Annie Get Your Gun, it's because the format is almost identical, even down to both films casting Howard Keel as the male lead, but Calamity Jane holds its own, thanks mostly to Doris Day's energy and a soundtrack with a few standout numbers, like Secret Love, which became a hit. It's not a history lesson, but it leans hard into the playful myth-making of the Old West. The movie's more interested in show tunes than frontier grit, but it was a hit, and Day's performance became her most iconic. It's surely one of the most entertaining musical westerns ever made. This one is set during the Mexican Revolution, but it plays more like a proto-spaghetti western, violent, cynical, and way ahead of its time. Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster star as two American mercenaries hired to escort a French countess through Mexico. Along the way, there's backstabbing, gold smuggling, and double crosses from every direction. The cast is stacked. Jack Elam, Charles Bronson, and Ernest Borgnine all show up in early roles. Mexican officials were not thrilled about how their countrymen were portrayed. This movie led to real changes in how Mexico handled foreign film shoots. It's why, by the time The Magnificent Seven came around, all the villagers were squeaky clean and dressed in white. Vera Cruz had already caused the PR nightmare. It's gritty, stylish, and was hugely influential. Sergio Leone straight up cited it as an inspiration. Made for $1.7 million, it earned more than $11 million. A legit hit that's somehow still underappreciated. The Horse Soldiers brings John Wayne into the Civil War, playing a Union colonel sent deep into Confederate territory on a dangerous cavalry raid. It's based loosely on a real mission during the war. Wayne's character, Colonel Marlowe, is clashing with everyone, especially the regimental surgeon, played by William Holden. And then there's Miss Hannah Hunter, a Southern civilian who tags along and throws a wrench in the whole operation. Directed by John Ford, the film was seen as underwhelming at the time. Critics called it lackluster, and it didn't make the kind of money people expected. But it's aged well. Behind the scenes, it was rough, though. Ford had been told to quit drinking or die, so he quit. But that made him even harder on the cast. Wayne took the brunt of it, especially when Ford decided he should also stop drinking, even though no doctor told him to. No wonder Wayne hated making this movie. It's not Ford's best, and he knew it. But The Horse Soldiers is still a smart, sobering look at the Civil War through a Western lens. Bend of the River is one of the more overlooked Westerns in the James Stewart Anthony Mann run of the 1950s, but it actually marked a big shift in Stewart's career, where he started playing darker, more violent characters. The story's set in 1847. Stewart plays Glenn McClintock, a former outlaw turned wagon guide trying to lead a group of settlers from Missouri to Oregon for a fresh start. Once gold is discovered nearby, the supplies meant for the settlers are seized by a local boss, and McClintock has to risk everything to get them back. The plot isn't groundbreaking. It's a pretty standard morality Western. But what makes it work is the setting. The film was shot in Oregon, and the landscape is a character in itself. You've got stunning footage of Mount Hood, the White River Glacier, and Timberline Lodge, and it's all shot with that classic Mann style. Broken Arrow was a major turning point in how Hollywood portrayed Native Americans, even if it doesn't hold up under a modern lens. James Stewart plays Tom Jeffords, a scout who tries to broker peace between white settlers and the Apaches in Arizona Territory. And at the time, this was huge. It was one of the first major films under the Hays Code to actually show Native Americans as people, not just enemies. This wasn't just a progressive move for the genre. It was risky for everyone involved. Stewart and director Delmer Daves both took a career gamble doing a film that humanized so-called enemies during a time when post-war American audiences weren't always looking for nuance. The pacing and story still hold up. It's not flashy, but it's sincere. And while modern viewers will rightfully critique the casting, Broken Arrow laid groundwork for more honest depictions of Native history in film. This one is a sharp revenge Western starring Kirk Douglas and Anthony Quinn, directed by John Sturges, and somehow it still doesn't get talked about as much as it should. Douglas plays a U.S. Marshal who finds out that the son of his old friend, now a powerful cattle baron, was involved in the assault and murder of his Native American wife. That setup alone was pretty bold for a 1950s studio Western. Douglas rides into town to bring the kid to justice, knowing full well that Quinn's character won't give him up without a fight. There's some brutal action, especially near the train tracks. A few of the deaths are handled with more restraint than gore, but the build-up is intense, and that's what makes them hit. It might not reach the heights of The Searchers or High Noon, but it's a tight, serious Western that holds up well, with more going on under the surface than it ever gets credit for. And behind the scenes, this was the last time Douglas and Quinn worked together. After this, they fell out hard over rival Spartacus projects. This one is another James Stewart Anthony Mann Western, and this time they take the action up north, all the way to the Canadian frontier. Stewart plays Jeff Webster, a cattleman from Wyoming who just wants to make enough money to buy a small ranch and be left alone. He and his partner, played by Walter Brennan, drive a herd of cattle to Dawson during the Klondike Gold Rush. But when they get there, they run straight into a corrupt lawman, played by John McIntyre, who's running the town and stealing claims from honest miners. The locations are stunning, shot in the Canadian Rockies, with sweeping views of snow-covered passes and river valleys. It's classic Mann cinematography, harsh beauty that mirrors the characters' inner lives. It's not as flashy as some of Mann's other westerns, but it's smart and atmospheric enough to be worth a watch. Friendly Persuasion takes a very different approach to war western. It's about a Quaker family in Indiana during the Civil War and what happens when their pacifist beliefs get tested by violence. Gary Cooper plays the father, and he hated this role. He thought audiences expected him to go fight, not stay home and wrestle with conscience. After watching the dailies, he never saw the film again. The family lives their lives by the Quaker Code. No violence, no swearing, no fighting. But when Confederate raiders show up, everything changes. The film is about the slow breakdown of idealism, not in a cynical way, but in a deeply human one. There's humor, warmth, and gentle pacing, but the final act gets serious. There's a battle based on real events, specifically a raid by Confederate General John Hunt Morgan. The violence isn't over the top, but it's enough to make the emotional cost hit hard.